Somaliland in Somaliland, Jamhuriyadda Somaliland is an unrecognized sovereign state. Actually, the state of Somaliland received international recognition from 35 countries that includes China, Egypt, Ethiopia, France, Ghana, Israel, Libya, and the Soviet Union. In the Horn of Africa, internationally considered to be part of Somalia. Depends who. Somaliland lies in the Horn of Africa, on the southern coast of the Gulf of Aden. It is bordered by Djibouti to the northwest, Ethiopia to the south and west, and Somalia to the east. Its claimed territory has an area of 100,076 and 120 square kilometers, with approximately 3.5 million residents in 2014. The capital and largest city in Hargeisa is Hargeisa. The government of Somaliland regards itself as the successor state to British Somaliland, which as the previously independent state of Somaliland, united in 1960 with the Trust Territory of Somaliland, the former Italian Somaliland, to form the Somali Republic. In 1988, at the age of the Somaliland War of Independence, the Siad Barre government began a crackdown against the Hargeisa-based Somali National Movement (SNM) and other militant groups, which were among the events that led to the Somali Civil War. The conflict left Somalia's economic and military infrastructure severely damaged. Following the collapse of Barre's government in early 1991, local authorities led by the SNM unilaterally declared independence from Somalia on 18th of May of the same year and reinstated the borders of the former short-lived independent state of Somaliland. Since 1991, the territory has been governed by democratically elected governments that seek international recognition as the government of the Republic of Somaliland. The central government maintains informal ties with some foreign governments, who have sent delegations to Hargeisa. Ethiopia also maintains a trade office in the region. However, Somaliland's self-proclaimed independence has not been officially recognized by any country or international organization. It is a member of the Unrepresented Nations and Peoples Organization, an advocacy group whose members consist of indigenous peoples, minorities, and unrecognized or occupied territories. The name Somaliland is derived from two words, Somali and land, The area was named when Great Britain took control from the Egyptian administration in 1884, after signing successive treaties with the ruling Somali sultans from the Isa Karaburdi and Warsangali clans. The British established a protectorate in the region referred to as British Somaliland. In 1960, when the protectorate became independent from Great Britain, it was called a State of Somaliland. 4 days later, on 1st of July of 1960, Somaliland united with Italian Somaliland. The name Republic of Somaliland was taken upon the Declaration of Independence following the Somali Civil War in 1991. At the Grand Conference in Burao held in 1991, many names for the country were suggested, including Puntland, in reference to Somaliland's location in the ancient land of Punt, and which is now the name of the Puntland state in neighboring Somalia, and Sakaron, meaning better than 5 in Somali, in reference to the 5 regions of Greater Somalia. Somaliland has been inhabited since at least the Paleolithic. During the Stone Age, the Doyan and Arhaisa cultures flourished here. The oldest evidence of burial customs in the Horn of Africa comes from cemeteries in Somaliland dating back to the 4th millennium. The stone implements from the Jalelo site in the north were also characterized in 1909 as important artifacts demonstrating their ecological universality during the Paleolithic between the east and the west. According to linguists, the first Afroasiatic speaking populations arrived in the region during the ensuing Neolithic period from the families proposed Urheimat, original homeland, in the Nile Valley or the Near East. The last Geel complex on the outskirts of Hargeisa in northwestern Somaliland dates back around 5,000 years and has rock art depicting both wild animals and decorated cows. Other cave paintings are found in the northern Dahabalin region, which featured one of the earliest known descriptions of a hunter on horseback. The rock art is the distinctive Ethiopian Arabian style dated to 1000 to 3000. Additionally, between the towns of Las Khonere and El Ayo in eastern Somaliland lies Karinghane, the site of numerous cave paintings of real and mystical animals. Each painting has an inscription below it, which collectively have been estimated to be around 2,500 years old. Ancient pyramidical structures, mausoleums, ruined cities, and stone walls, such as the Wargad Wall, are evidence of an old civilization that once thrived in the Somali Peninsula. This civilization enjoyed a trading relationship with ancient Egypt and Mycenaean Greece since the second millennium, supporting the hypothesis that Somalia or adjacent regions were the location of the ancient land of Punt. The Puntites traded myrrh, spices, gold, ebony, sword, hornacastle, ivory, and frankincense with the Egyptians, Phoenicians, Babylonians, Indians, Chinese, and Romans through their commercial ports. An Egyptian expedition sent to Punt by the 8th dynasty queen Hatshepsut is recorded on the temple reliefs at Deir al-Bahari during the reign of the Puntite king Parahu and Queen Ati. In 2015, isotopic analysis of ancient Babon mummies from Punt that had been brought to Egypt and Gives indicates that specimens likely originated from an area encompassing eastern Somalia and the Eritrea-Ethiopia corridor. The camel is believed to have been domesticated in the whole region sometime between the 2nd and the 3rd millennium. From there, it spread to Egypt and the Maghreb. During the Classical period, the northern Barbara city-state of Mosilon, Opone, Mundus, Isis, Malau, Abalites, Escina, Nikon, and Serapion developed a lucrative trade network connecting with merchants from Ptolemaic Egypt, ancient Greece, Phoenicia, Persian Persia, Saba, the Nabatean Kingdom, and the Roman Empire. They used the ancient Somali maritime vessel known as the Beden to transport their cargo. After the Roman conquest of the Nabatean Empire and the Roman naval presence at Aden to curb piracy, Arab and Somali merchants agreed with the Romans to buy Indian ships for trading in the free port cities of the Arabian Peninsula to protect the interests of Somali and Arab merchants in the lucrative commerce between the Red and Mediterranean seas. However, Indian merchants continued to trade in the port cities of the Somali Peninsula, which was free from Roman interference. For centuries, Indian merchants brought large quantities of cinnamon to Somalia and Arabia from Ceylon and the Spice Islands. The source of the cinnamon and other spices is said to have been the best kept secret of Arab and Somali merchants in their trade with the Roman and Greek world. The Romans and Greeks believe the source to have been the Somali Peninsula. The collusive agreement among Somali and Arab traders inflated the price of Indian and Chinese cinnamon in North Africa, the Near East, and Europe, and made the cinnamon trade a very profitable revenue generator, especially for the Somali merchants through whose hands large quantities were shipped across sea and land routes. In 2007, more rock and site with Sabahan and Himyari writings in and around Hargeisa region were found, but some were bulldozed by developers. Various Somali Muslim kingdoms were established around the period in the area. In the 4th century, the Zeyle-Based Adal Sultanate battled the forces of the Ethiopian Emperor Ambaseyon. The Ottoman Empire later occupied Berbera and Ebiro in the 1000 in the 1500. Muhammad Ali Pasha of Egypt subsequently established a foothold in the area between 1821 and 1841. In the early modern period, successor states to the Adal Sultanate began to flourish in Somaliland. This includes the Isaaq Sultanate and Habr Yunis Sultanate. The first engagement between Somalis of the region and the British was in 1825 and ended violently. This culminated in the Battle of Berbera, a sequestrate agreement between the Harb Awal and the United Kingdom. It was followed by a British treaty with the governor of Zeila in 1840. An engagement was started between the British and elder of Habar Garahis and Habar Tojala clans of the Isaaq in 1855, followed a year later by the conclusion of the Articles of Peace and Friendship between the Habar Awal and its India Company. These engagements between the British and Somali clans culminate in the formal treaties the British signed by the henceforth British Somaliland clans, which took place between 1884 and 1886. Treaties were signed with the Habar Awal, Gadabursi, Habar Tojala, Habar Garahais, Esa, and the Warsangali clans. This paved the way to the British to establish a protectorate in the region referred to as British Somaliland. The British garrisoned the protectorate from Aden and administered it as a part of British India until 1898. British Somaliland was then administered by Foreign Office until 1905 and afterwards by the Colonial Office. The Somaliland Campaign, also called the Anglo-Somali War or the Derwish War, was a series of military expeditions that took place between 1900 and 1920 in the Horn of Africa, pitting the dervishes led by Muhammad Abdullah Hassan, nicknamed the Mad Mullah, against the British. The British were assisted in their offensive by the Ethiopians and Italians. During the First World War, 1914-1918, Hassan also received aid for the Ottomans, Germans, and for a time for the Emperor Iyyasu V of Ethiopia. The conflict ended when the British aerially bombed the Dervish capital of Taleh in February 1920. The fifth expedition of the Somaliland campaign in 1920 was the final British expedition against the Dervish forces of Muhammad Abdullah Hassan, the Somali religious leader. Although most of the combat took place in January of the year, British troops had begun preparation for the assault as early as November 1919. The British forces included elements of the Royal Air Force and the Somaliland Camel Corps. After 3 weeks of battle, Hassan's dervishes were defeated, bringing an effective end to their 20-year resistance. The Italian conquest of British Somaliland was a military campaign in East Africa, which took place in August of 1940 between forces of Italy and those of several British and Commonwealth countries. The Italian expedition was part of the East African campaign. The people of Burao clashed with the British in 1922 after a heavy tax was imposed upon them. They resolved in opposition to the tax, and this causes them to riot and attack British government officials. In the ensuing disturbance and shootout between the British and Burao residents broke out. Captain Alan Gibb, and Dervish war veteran and district commissioner, was shot and killed. The British, fearing they could not contain the revolt, requested from Sir Winston Churchill, then Secretary of the State for the Colonies, to send troops from Aden and airplane bombers in order to bomb Burao and livestock of the revolting clans to quell any further rebellion. The RAF planes arrived at Burao within 3 days and proceeded to bomb the town with incendiaries, effectively burning the entire settlement to the ground. After the RAF aircraft bombed Burao to the ground, the leaders of the rebellion acquiesced, agreeing to pay a fine for Gibbs' deaths, but they refused to identify and apprehend the accused individuals. Most of the men responsible for Gibbs' shooting evaded capture. In light of the failure to implement the transaction without provoking a violent response, the British abandoned the policy altogether. The 1945 Sheikh Bashir rebellion was a rebellion waged by tribesmen of the Harb Yellow clan in the former British Somaliland Protectorate against British authorities in July 1945, led by Sheikh Bashir, a Somali religious leader. On 2nd of July, Sheikh Bashir collected 25 of his followers in the town of Wadamaco and transported them on El Ori to the vicinity of Burao, where he distributed arms to half of his followers. On the evening of the 3rd of July, the group entered Burao and opened fire on the police guard of the central prison in the city, which was filled with prisoners arrested for previous demonstrations. The group also attacked the house of the district commissioner of Burao district, Mayor Chambers, resulting in the death of Mayor Chambers' police guard before escaping to Bur Dahab, a strategic mountain southeast of Burao, where Sheikh Bashir's small unit occupied a fort and took up a defense position in anticipation of a British counterattack. The British campaign against Sheikh Bashir's troops proved abortive after several defeats, and his forces keeps moving from place to place and avoiding any permanent location. No sooner had the expedition left the area that the news traveled fast among the Somali nomads across the plain. The war had exposed the British administration to humiliation. The government came to a conclusion that another expedition against him would be useless, that they must build a railway, make roads, and effectively occupy the whole of the protectorate, or else abandon the interior completely. The later course was decided upon, and during the first month of 1945, the advanced posts were withdrawn and the British administration confined it to the coast town of Berbera. Sheikh Bashir settled many disputes among the tribes in the vicinity, which kept them from raiding each other. He was generally thought to set the dispute through the use of Islamic Sharia and gathered around him a strong following. The British administration recruited Indian and South African troops led by Police General James David to fight against Sheikh Bashir and had intelligent plans to capture him alive. The British authorities mobilized a police force and eventually on 7th of July found Sheikh Bashir and his unit in defensive positions behind the fortifications in the mountains of Bur Dahab. After clashes, Sheikh Bashir and his second in command, Ali Yusuf Ali, nicknamed Qaibdi, were killed. A third rebel was wounded and was captured along with 2 other rebels. The rest fled the fortification and dispersed. On the British side, the police general leading the British troops as well as a number of Indian and South African troops perished in the clashes, and a policeman was injured. After his death, Sheikh Bashir was widely hailed by locals as a martyr and was held in great reverence. His family took quick action to remove his body from the place of his death at Gela Air mountain, about 20 miles from Burao. In May of 1960, the British government stated that it would be prepared to grant independence to the then Protectorate of British Somaliland with the intention that the territory will unite with the Italian administered Truce territory of Somaliland under Italian administration, the former Italian Somaliland. The Legislative Council of British Somaliland passed a resolution in April of 1960 requesting independence and union with the Truce territory of Somaliland, which was essential to gain independence on 1st of July that year. The legislative councils of both territories agreed to this proposal following a joint conference in Mogadishu on 26th of June in 1960. The former British Somalian Protectorate briefly obtained independence as the state of Somaliland, with the Truce territory of Somaliland following suit 5 days later. During its brief period of independence, the state of Somaliland garnered recognition from 35 sovereign states. The following day, on 27 of June 1960, the newly convened Somaliland Legislative Assembly approved a bill that would formally allow the union of the state of Somaliland with the Truce territory of Somaliland on the 1st of July of 1960. On 1st of July of 1960, the Protectorate and the Truce territory of Somaliland, the former Italian Somaliland, united and planned to form the Somali Republic. Inspired by Somali nationalism, the Northerners were initially enthusiastic about the union. A government was formed by Abdullahi Isa with Aden Abdullah Osman Dar as president, and Abdurrashid Ali Sarmarke as prime minister, later to become president from 1967 to 1969. On 20th of July 1961, and through a popular referendum, the Somali people ratified a new constitution, which was first drafted in 1960. The constitution had little support in the former Somaliland and was believed to favor the South. Many Northerners boycotted the referendum in protest, and over 60% of those who voted in the North were against the new constitution. Regardless, the referendum passed, and Somaliland became quickly dominated by Southerners. As a result, dissatisfaction became with the spread in the North, and support for the Union plummeted. British training Somaliland officers attempted a revolt to end the Union in December 1961. Their uprising failed, and Somaliland continued to be marginalized by the South during the next decades. In 1967, Mohammed Haji Ibrahim Egal became Prime Minister, a position to which he was appointed by Sarmarke. Sarmarke was assassinated 2 years later by one of his own bodyguards. His murder was quickly followed by a military coup d'etat of 21 October 1969, the day after his funeral, in which the Somalian army seized power without encountering armed opposition. The putsch was spearheaded by Major General Mohamed Siad Barre, who at the time commanded the army. The new regiment would go on to rule Somalia for the next 22 years. The moral authority of Barre's government was gradually eroded, and many Somalis became disillusioned with life under military rule. By the mid of 18th, resistance movements supported the Ethiopian communist Derg administration had sprung up across the country. Barre responded by ordering punitive measures against those he perceived as locally supporting the guerrillas, especially in the northern regions. The clampdown included bombing of cities with the northwestern administrative center of Hargeisa, a Somali National Government (SNM) stronghold, among the targeted areas in 1988. The bombardment was led by General Mohammed Said Hersi Morgan, Barre's son-in-law. According to Abu Yeng and other scholars, the Barre regiment rule was marked by a targeted brutal persecution of the Isaac clan. Muhammad Haji Ingris and Chris Mullin state that the clampdown by the Barre regiment against the Hargeisa-based Somali National Movement targeted the Isaac clan, to which most members of the SNM belonged. They referred to the clampdowns and the Isaac genocide or Hargeisa Holocaust. A United Nations investigation concluded that the crime of genocide was conceived, planned, and perpetrated by the Somali government against the Isaac people. The number of civilian casualties is estimated to be between 5,000 50,000 and 100,000 according to various sources, while some reports estimate the local civilian deaths to the upwards of 200,000 Isaac civilians. Along with the deaths, Barre regiment bombarded and razed the second and third largest cities in Somalia, Hargeisa and Burao, respectively. This displaces an estimate 400,000 local residents to Harta Sheikh in Ethiopia, another 400,000 individuals were also internally displaced. The counterinsurgency by the Barre regiment against the SNM targeted the rebel group's civilian base of support, escalating into a genocidal all-out against the Isaac clan. This led to anarchy and violent campaign by fragmented militias, with them wrested power at a local level. The Barre regiment's persecutions was not limited to the Isaac, and it is targeted other clans of the Hawiye. The Barre regiment collapses in January 1991. Thereafter, has the political situation in Somaliland stabilized, the displaced people returned to their homes. The militias were demobilized or incorporated into the army, and tens of thousands of houses and businesses were reduced from rubble. Although the SNM and its inspection had an unionist constitution, it eventually began to pursue independence, looking to secede from the rest of Somalia. Under the leadership of Abdirrahman Ahmed Ali Tour, the local administration declared the northwestern Somali territories independent at a conference held in Burao between 27 of April 1991 and 15 of May 1991. Tour then became the newly established Somaliland's politics first president, but subsequently renounced the separatist platform in 1994 and began instead to publicly seek and advocate the reconciliation with the rest of Somalia under a power-sharing federal system of governance. Mohammed Haji Ibrahim Egal was appointed as Tour's successor in 1993 by the Grand Conference of National Reconciliation in Borama, which met for 4 months, leading to a gradual improvement in security as well as a consolidation of the new territory. Egal was reappointed in 1997 and remained in power until his death on 3rd of May 2002. The Vice President Dahir Riyal Kahin, who has died in the 1980s, the highest ranking National Security Service NSS officer in Berbera in Siad Barre's government, was sworn in as president shortly after that. In 2003, Kahin became the first elected president of Somaliland. The war in southern Somalia between Islamist insurgents on the one hand and the federal government of Somalia and its African Union alliance of the other has for the most part not directly affected Somaliland, which, like neighboring Puntland, has remained relatively stable. In August 2000, President Egal's government distributed thousands of copies of the proposed constitution throughout Somaliland for consideration and review by the people. One critical clause of the 130 individual articles of the constitution were ratify Somaliland's self-declared independence and final separation from Somalia, restoring the nation's independence for the first time since 1960 in late March 2001. President Egal set the date for the referendum on the Constitution for 31 of May 2001. A constitutional referendum was held in Somaliland on 31 of May 2001. The referendum was held on the draft constitution that affirmed Somaliland's independence from Somalia. 99 with 99% of eligible voters took part in the referendum, and 97.1% of the voted in favor of the constitution. The Gurti worked with rebel leaders to set up a new government and was incorporated into the government structure, becoming the Parliament's House of Elders. The government became, in essence, a power-sharing coalition of Somaliland main clans, with seats in the upper and lower houses proportionally allocated to clans according to a predetermined formula, although not all clans are satisfied with their representation. In 2002, after several stations of this interim government, Somaliland transitioned to multi-party democracy. The election was limited to 3 parties in an attempt to create ideology-based elections rather than clan-based elections. As of December 2014, Somaliland has 3 political parties: the Peace, Unity and Development Party, the Justice and Development Party, and Wadani. Under the Somaliland Constitution, a maximum of 3 political parties at the national levels is allowed. The minimum age required to vote is 15. The executive is led by an elected president whose government includes a vice president and a council of ministers. The council of ministers, who are responsible for the normal running of government, are nominated by the President and approved by the Parliament House of Representatives. The President must approve bills passed by the Parliament before they come into effect. Presidential elections are confirmed by the National Electoral Commission of Somaliland. The President can serve a maximum of 2 5-year terms. Legislative power inheld by the bicameral parliament, its upper house in the House of Elders. This chamber is chaired by Sulaiman Mohammed Adam, and the lower house in the House of Representatives. The lower house is chaired by Bashir Mohammed Farah. Each house has 82 members. Members of the House of Elders are elected indirectly by local communities for 6-year terms. The House of Elders shares power in passing laws with the House of Representatives and also has the role of solving internal conflicts and exclusive power to extend the terms of the President and representatives under circumstances that make an election impossible. Members of the House of Representatives are directly elected by the people for 5-year terms. The House of Representatives shares voting power with the House of Elders. Thus, it can pass a law that the House of Elders rejects if it votes for the law by a 2/3 majority and has absolute power in financial matters and confirmation of presidential appointments, except for the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. The judicial system is divided into district courts, which deal with matters of family law and succession, lawsuits for amounts up to 3 million, criminal cases punishable by up to 3 years imprisonment or 3 million of SL fines, and crimes committed by juveniles. Regional courts will deal with lawsuits and criminal cases not within the jurisdiction of district courts, labor, unemployment claims, and local government elections. Regional appeals courts will deal with all appeals from the district and regional courts, and the Supreme Court, which deals with the issues between courts and in government, arrive its own decisions, which is the higher court and also functions as the constitutional court. Somaliland nationality law defines who is Somaliland citizen, as well as the procedures by which one may be naturalized into Somaliland citizenship or renounce it. The Somaliland government continues to apply the 1962 Penal Code of the Somali Republic. As such, homosexual acts are illegal in the territory. As Islam says, Alhamdulillah. Freedom House ranks the Somaliland government as party democratic. Seth Kaplan, 2011, argues that it contrasts to southern Somalia and adjacent territory Somaliland, the secessionist northwestern portion of Somalia has built a more democratic mode of governance from the bottom up, with virtually no foreign assistance. Specifically, Kaplan suggests that Somaliland has the most democratic political system in the Horn of Africa because it has been largely insulated from the extremist elements in the rest of Somalia and has viable electoral and legislative systems as well as a robust private sector dominated economy and likely neighboring authoritarian governments. He largely attributes this to Somaliland's integration of customary laws and tradition with modern state structures, would he indicate most post-colonial states in Africa and the Middle East have not had the opportunity to do. Kaplan asserts that this has facilitated cohesiveness and conferred greater government legitimacy in Somaliland and has the territory's comparatively homogeneous population, relatively equitable income distribution, a common fare of the South, an absence of interference by outside forces, which has obligated local politicians to observe a degree of accountability. Somaliland has political contacts with its neighbors Ethiopia and Djibouti, non-member state Republic of China, Taiwan, as well as with South Africa, Sweden, and the United Kingdom, and the micronation of Liberland. On 17th of January 2007, the European Union sent a delegation to Foreign Affairs to discuss future cooperation. The African Union has also sent a foreign minister to discuss the future of international acknowledgement. And on 29 and 30 of January 2007, the minister stated that they will discuss acknowledgement with the organization's member states. In early 2006, the National Assembly of Wales extended an official invitation to the Somaliland government to attend to the royal opening of the Senate building in Cardiff. The move was seen as an act of recognition by the Wales Assembly of the breakaway government legitimacy. The Foreign and Commonwealth Office made no comment on the invitation. Wales is home to significant Somali expatriate community from Somaliland. In 2007, a delegation led by President Kahin was present at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Kampala, Uganda. Although Somaliland has applied to join the Commonwealth under observer status, its application is still pending. On 24 September 2010, Johnny Carson, Assistant Secretary of State for African Affairs, stated that the United States will be modifying its strategy in Somalia and will seek deeper engagement with the governments of Somaliland and Puntland while continuing to support the Somali transitional government. Carson said the USA will send aid workers and diplomats to Puntland and Somaliland and alluded to the possibility of future development projects. However, Carson emphasized that the USA will not extend formal recognition to either region. The then United Kingdom Minister for Africa, Henry Bellingham, met President Sinlanjo on Somaliland in November 2010 to discuss ways in which to increase the United Kingdom's engagement with Somaliland. President Sinlanjo said during his visit to London, "We have been working with the international community, and the international community has been engaging with us, giving us assistance and working with us in our democratization and development programs, and we are very happy with the way the international community has been dealing with us, particularly the United Kingdom, the USA, other Europe nations, and our neighbors who continue to seek recognition. Recognition of Somaliland by the United Kingdom has also been supported by the United Kingdom Independence Party, which came third in the popular vote in 2015 general election. The leader of UKIP, Nigel Farage, met with Ali Aden Awale, head of the Somaliland United Kingdom Mission on Somaliland's National Day, 18th of May in 2015, to express UKIP's support for Somaliland. Nigel Farage said that Somaliland has been a beacon of peace, democracy, and rule of law in the Horn of Africa for the past 24 years. It is about like the United Kingdom and the rest of the international community recognize Somaliland's case for recognition. It's about time peace was rewarded. For the United Kingdom to turn its back on its legislative demands for sovereignty is wrong. It is extraordinary that we have not been lobbying for the admittance to the Commonwealth. In recent years, we have supported the admission of countries such as Mozambique, which have no historic links to Britain, but Somaliland, a former protectorate, is left in the cold. This must change. In 2011, Somaliland, a neighboring Puntland region, it entered a security-related memorandum of understanding with the Seychelles, following the framework of the early agreement signed between the transitional federal government and Seychelles. The memorandum is for the transfer of convicted persons to prison in Puntland and Somaliland. In the 1st of July 2020, Somaliland and Taiwan signed an agreement to set up representative offices to promote cooperation between the two countries. Cooperation between the two polities on education, maritime security, and medicine began in 2009, and Taiwanese staff entered Somaliland in February 2020 to prepare for the representative office. Somaliland continues to claim the entire area of the former British Somaliland. It is currently in the control of the vast majority of the former British Somaliland. Tensions between Puntland and Somaliland escalated into violence several times between 2002 and 2009. In October 2004 and again in April and October 2007, armed forces on Somaliland and Puntland clashes near the town of Las Anod, the capital of Seoul region. In October 2007, Somaliland troops took control of the town, while celebrating Puntland's 11th anniversary on 2 of August. In 2009, Puntland officials vowed to recapture Las Anod, while Somaliland claims independence, statehood, and therefore split up. The old Somalia Puntland works for the establishment of an united but federal Somali state. Somaliland forces took control of the town of Las Qorey in eastern Sana'a on 10 of July 2008, along with positions 5 kilometers east of the town. The Defense Force completed their operation of 9 on July 2008 after the Maghir and Puntland militia in the area left their positions. In the late of 2000s, HBM SSC Hokanka Badada Iyo Mideinta, a local unionist group based in Sana'a, was forced with the goal to establish its own regional administration. Seoul, Sana'a, and Caen. This later evolved into Katumo State, which was established in 2012. The local administration and its constituent doesn't recognize the Somaliland government's claims to sovereignty or to its territory. On 20 October 2017 in Ainabo, an agreement was signed with the Somaliland government which stipulated the amendment of Somaliland's constitution and to integrate the organization into the Somaliland government. They signaled the end of the organization, even though it was an unpopular event amongst the Dugbahante community. The Somaliland Armed Forces are the main military command in Somaliland, along with the Somaliland Police and all other internal security forces. They are overseen by Somaliland's Ministry of Defense. The current head of Somaliland's armed forces in the Ministry of Defense, Abdi Qani Mohammed Ateye, following the Declaration of Independence, various pre-existing militia affiliated with different clans were absorbed into a centralized military structure. The resultant large military takes up around half of the country's budget, but the action served to help prevent inter-clan violence. The Somaliland army consists of 12 divisions equipped primarily with light weaponry, though it is equipped with some howitzers and mobile rocket launchers. Its armored vehicles and tanks are mostly of Soviet design, though there are some against Western vehicles and tanks in its arsenal. The Somaliland Navy, often referred to as SWAT by the Associated Press, despite a crippling lack of equipment and formal training, has apparently had some success in curbing both piracy and illegal fishing within Somaliland waters.